America loves to call itself the land of the free, but the founding fathers were literal criminals by British law. The only difference between a patriot and a traitor is who writes the history books. And America's been rebranding rebellion ever since. But only when it's convenient, of course. America was founded by rebels, criminals, traitors. And the only reason you call them heroes today is because they wrote their own history books. In 1776, if you fought against Britain, you were labeled as a traitor, a terrorist, an enemy of the crown. They didn't win freedom politely. They didn't negotiate in suits and pearls. They shot people. They burned cities. They rioted in the streets. Fast forward a few hundred years. When Black people protest, thugs. When Indigenous people resist, savages. When workers strike, communists. America loves rebellion, but only when it's white, powdered wigged, and wearing a flag. The truth is, rebellion's only patriotic when it protects their version of freedom. If you challenge the systems that they built, if you remind them that freedom wasn't for everybody, you're dangerous again. You're not supposed to challenge the machine. You're supposed to bow to it. While they tell you that rebellion built this country, and it did, but only the rebellions that they could cash in on.
Hello guys, welcome once again to the channel. I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. Now we have seen how the society works against people who are in the minority. For example, going to the United States, you're able to see that being a white majority has been an advantage to white people. And that is why, if you look at most laws that have always been created in that part of the world, they have always been made with white people in mind. And that really tells you how dominant communities and societies work against minorities. For example, you look at how criminal justice system works. It is always skewed against blacks and other minority groups. But then, for white people, it works well. And that begs the question, when someone says that America is the land of the free, is it really the truth? Because we know that the Constitution should be guiding this country in terms of how it works towards achieving certain desires of the society. But then you realize that while the Constitution dictates that America is free for everyone, we realize that this Constitution in itself was written and created by people who are not really pro-everyone. They were always against a certain group of people. They did not have the interests of black people or minority groups, as it were. All they did is focus on the interest of majority who are white, and that is what guides every policy and every law that is made in the United States. In today's video, this is what we're going to discuss. There are certain instances where you realize that wherever you thought that the law would be applied equally to everyone, it doesn't appear as such. Those who made these laws were slave owners. Those who made these laws persecuted blacks. They didn't believe in blacks becoming anything in the United States. And in fact, that is why you find that there are certain times where certain group and certain segments of the society were not allowed to vote and make their decisions towards elective politics in America, because the creators of the Constitution believed that America was not for the minority, but that of white people. So, I came across some clips that are also championing the same issue that I'm talking about, and I want to share them with you so that you get to understand how unequal America is and how the foundations of constitution making in America was skewed against minority groups. Let's watch this, then come back and share our thoughts.
America has always been a land of contradiction. The Constitution says we the people, but who did they really mean? For centuries, laws in this country have served as shields for some and weapons against others. White supremacy, white nationalism, white conservatism, they've used the law not as a tool of fairness, but as a leash to control everyone else. And when those laws are no longer useful to them, they discard them without hesitation. We're living in a time when it feels like the Constitution never existed, like we are not in the year 2025, but in 1825. We talk about the Titanic, but never the thousands of slave ships that sank, filled with black bodies, thrown overboard, some still breathing, some shackled to each other, forgotten at the bottom of the Atlantic. We talk about Pearl Harbor, but not Black Wall Street, not Rosewood, not Oscarville, not the thousands of black Americans who were lynched, burned, drowned, mutilated, and never received justice. Emmett Till's murderer died free, so did the police who murdered Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Tyree Nichols. Our blood has fed the soil, and the only thing that ever grew from it was denial. Now, let's talk about today. Concentration camps. Yes, I said it. Not detention centers. Camps. An 82-year-old man went to get his green card replaced after losing his wallet. ICE took him. He's dead now, and they don't know where he is. Deportation planes take off and come back empty, but never land where they said they were going. There are whispers of oceans of bodies thrown overboard, of entire flights disappearing. And now we have white men in full tactical gear with faces covered, grabbing people off the streets. No badge, no IDs, no Miranda rights, no due process. They are targeting dialects, skin tones, children, workers, students. This isn't a movie. This is America right now. We were told the law would protect us. Civil rights were supposed to be the great equalizer. But what happens when the law only matters if a white man is harmed? What happens when lawsuits sit on the books for years only to be thrown out by a regime that sees no value in black life? We've entered a new era, but with an old script. White America is once again reminding us, we made the laws. We don't have to follow them. It's not just hypocrisy, it's terrorism with a suit on. Sex trafficking is a billion-dollar business. And in America, once you are taken, you are often never seen again. IDs change, birth records vanish, and nobody blinks. Why? Because the missing are usually black, brown, poor, immigrant, queer, or simply inconvenient. Our system is more equipped to trace a lost Amazon package than a missing child. Ask yourself, how did we get here? But more importantly, why are we still here? Let me say this clearly before I go any further. I am not a preacher. I don't come to you as a religious authority. I come to you as a woman who was raised in the truth. I come to you as someone who's watching the Bible reveal itself right in front of our eyes. And what I see happening right now, the oppression, the cruelty, the hunger for power, the regime turning against its own people, this was already written before we ever knew it would happen, which means the ending has also already been written. And the ending is not in their favor. I've come to realize something. Our deliverance will not come from Congress, not from Democrats, not from Republicans, not even from the Constitution, because the laws that were meant to protect us were never meant for us. The only thing keeping us alive right now is God. The same God they try to erase, the same higher power they mock, reduce to science, or try to replace with greed and power. But the scriptures say, the one who made the ear, can he not hear? The one who formed the eye, can he not see? Psalms 94, verse 9, New World Translation 2013. He's watching, and he will repay. Let me say this plainly. The very laws white supremacy created will be the same laws that destroy them. He will make their own violence return upon them. He will destroy them by their own evil. Jehovah our God will silence them. Psalms 94, verse 23, New World Translation 2013. They are building a system that will be their own demise. A regime so greedy, so wicked, so obsessed with dominance that it cannot sustain itself. Everything they are doing now, especially with the things like the One Big Beautiful Bill, is designed to take from the poor and line the pockets of billionaires. They are stripping healthcare, housing, education, and rights away while giving the elite more power. But even this was foretold. Their silver will be thrown into the streets, and their gold will become abhorrent. Their silver and their gold will not be able to save them on the day of Jehovah's fury. Ezekiel 7, verse 19, New World Translation 2013. The money they worship will be worthless. The systems they trust will collapse. The men they follow will be judged. I know it feels hopeless. I know it looks terrifying. But the moment you realize that what's happening now is already predicted is the moment you regain your peace. Because no matter what it looks like now, the outcome is not in their hands. They are writing laws with cruelty, but those laws will trap them. They are creating surveillance to monitor the people, but those same cameras will expose them. They are building a fortress, but it's made of sand, because in the end, white supremacy is writing a check that even white America won't be able to cash. And I pray we live enough or long enough to see it happen.
Holy shit, they call it the law of the land, but the truth is the Constitution was never meant for all of us. The people who wrote it owned humans, raped women, beat children, and called it liberty. That's what we're told to worship. Blood-stained rules written by kings without crowns. And just like the Bible, it's been twisted, cherry-picked, and weaponized to justify the worst horrors this country has ever committed. You think the government actually cares about the Constitution? They don't even pretend anymore. Presidents ignore checks, police ignore rights, courts bend reality to fit the agenda of whoever's in power. One day it's freedom of speech. Next day, protesters are choked out in the street. One day, it's due process. Next day, drones kill American citizens without trial. The parchment only matters when it protects property, not people. They don't follow the rules. They use them as a muzzle. And the people, they parrot amendments like they're scripture, quoting the Second Amendment like gospel, ignoring the massacres piling up in its name, screaming about the first while cheering the arrests of journalists. They interpret the Constitution the same way they interpret the Bible, selectively, hypocritically, and always in defense of power. Never in defense of the poor, or the queer, or the trans women, or the migrant father, or the black mother. Both texts are treated like holy relics, but neither has ever protected the most vulnerable. The Constitution enshrined slavery, erased indigenous nations, and locked women out. The Bible was used to justify it. Manifest destiny was not just conquest, it was scripture and statute walking hand in hand over the bones of the colonized. And even now, we're watching the government shred its own doctrine. Supreme Court justices who claim original intent while gutting civil rights. Congress writes laws that starve kids and jail the poor while quoting Jefferson. Presidents invoke executive authority to bypass every safeguard. If it is sacred, why do they treat it like scrap? It is a lie. It always has been. The Constitution is not freedom, it is a cage, written to protect wealth, maintain hierarchy, and pacify revolt. Just like the Bible has been used to silence dissent, the Constitution is used to criminalize survival. They don't believe in it. They believe in power, and power doesn't need truth, just tradition repeated loud enough to drown out the bodies. Burn the myth. Tear up the scripture. Stop pretending justice lives in documents written by tyrants. Our freedom won't be found in old ink or ancient verses. It will be built from the ground up by the people the Constitution was written to control. They've got you believing genocide is just governance in motion. That is the con. Here lies the sickness. Neoliberalism is not reality. It is a chosen belief system meticulously engineered, enforced through debt, violence, and despair. Marketed like gravity, paraded as truth, wrapped in academic gloss and bipartisan applause. Still, this machine was built to serve the few, and it demands bodies to keep it humming. People speak like this is the edge of possibility. It's complicated, they mutter. We've got to be realistic. No. That's the logic of someone who's been broken by repetition and told the bruises are democracy. Trauma gets repackaged as discipline. Pain gets rebranded as maturity. After years of political gaslighting, folks start mistaking the cage for a cradle. What neoliberalism thrives on is your despair. Exhaustion is its oxygen. Apathy is its armor, because the second people start imagining something else, when they dare to build without permission, the empire begins to fracture. Hope, not fear, is what terrifies it most. This isn't a failing system, it is a predatory one. The prison industrial complex was not born from crime waves. It was designed to warehouse poverty and profit from suffering. Over 2 million people remain caged across the United States as of this year. Most are working class people. A vast majority of black, brown, disabled, queer, and trans disposable by policy. Simultaneously, the war machine accelerates. Over $900 billion was funneled into the Pentagon this year. At least 750 military bases dot the globe. More than 80 countries host U.S. forces. This is not protection, it is conquest in a uniform. It is extraction enforced by missiles. Democrats pantomime compassion while underwriting carnage. They dress violence in inclusion language and sell it as progress. One hand waves the rainbow flag while the other signs off on drone strikes. They'll post solidarity hashtags for Gaza, then vote to fund the bombs that level its neighborhoods. That is not justice. It is complicity in a prettier package. You won't reach socialism by marching through a capitalist pipeline. Elevating a communist within a neoliberal framework doesn't disrupt the machine, it guts them, it neuters them. What begins as resistance ends in paperwork. Revolutionaries get forced to smile through genocide and call it governance. This country does not simply stumble, it dominates by design. Internally, it criminalizes hunger. Globally, it topples governments, installs loyalists, and plunders land. And somehow, you're still asking if a few tweaks around the edges might be enough? Each time you sigh and say, maybe this is just how it is, you breathe life into the system. That is not realism, it is resignation. You sound like someone who's been convinced survival is all they're worth. Escaping that belief requires radical vision. Dreaming becomes defiance. It demands the courage to believe that another world is not just theoretical, it's already being built in the shadows of empire by hands they try to disappear. Comfort will not shield you. Silence won't protect your neighbor. Stability purchased with blood is not stability, it is sanctioned brutality. You were not born to be controlled. Compliance was never your purpose. No one was meant to be manageable. You were made to light the whole lie on fire and build something living in the ashes.
America loves to call itself the land of the free, but the founding fathers were literal criminals by British law. The only difference between a patriot and a traitor is who writes the history books. And America has been rebranding rebellion ever since. But only when it's convenient, of course. America was founded by rebels, criminals, traitors. And the only reason you call them heroes today is because they wrote their own history books. In 1776, if you fought against Britain, you were labeled as a traitor, a terrorist, an enemy of the crown. They didn't win freedom politely. They didn't negotiate in suits and pearls. They shot people. They burned cities. They rioted in the streets. Fast forward a few hundred years. When Black people protest, thugs. When Indigenous people resist, savages. When workers strike, communists. America loves rebellion, but only when it's white, powdered wigged, and wearing a flag. The truth is, rebellion's only patriotic when it protects their version of freedom. If you challenge the systems that they built, if you remind them that freedom wasn't for everybody, you're dangerous again. You're not supposed to challenge the machine. You're supposed to bow to it. While they tell you that rebellion built this country. And it did. But only the rebellions that they could cash in on.
Trump has impacted every part of my life. There's a reason why you haven't heard me talk about it as much recently. Because it gets to a point where you have to take a step back, and I want to talk a little bit about it without sharing too many details because your girl is still private. The administration has deeply impacted my quality of sleep and quantity of it as well. I wear an Apple Watch every night for months now to track my sleep. There's a noticeable deep decline in quantity and quality after November 5th. It's not really hard to figure out why. So all those people that come on here and see me making these like my night zoomy videos and are like, do you ever sleep? No, not really. TBH. I'm working on it. But, you know, things are a little rough right now. There's also the social weight of all of this as well, especially as someone that is a part of multiple marginalized communities and have communities that also are part of those communities as well, because there are certain people that are able to key in and key out of what is happening at a national level more than others. So depending on your level of privilege, you are able to distance yourself from it in a varying ways. I myself am able to probably distance myself more so from it than someone that's Mexican American, because I'm not currently worried about ICE impacting me directly. That being said, though, I do have people in my community that are, which is a whole nother thing. But that has been a big thing too, because it's like, because of the way that this country operates, we still have to work and do life even as all of this is happening, which is hard, especially when the weight of all of this is going to be disproportionate depending on who you are. He's greatly impacted my work in many different ways. He's impacted my student loans. That's something that I have quite a bit of, and he has made it significantly harder to deal with that. He's impacted me medically, which I won't be getting into, but it is a thing, and community-wise as well, because like I said, I have Mexican American people and people in general that are being targeted by ICE in my life that I worry for quite a bit because of what is happening right now. And that's not even to mention the issues with job security that they're having and a whole bunch of other stuff because of the industries that they operate in, and which even goes to my family, because my family, I have a lot of family that works in the government and the military. They're definitely being impacted by all of this. And then I have the older people in my family as well that are like on pins and needles about Social Security. Like, there's so many ways that he's impacting a lot of us. I'm very aware. But me particularly, that just has become overwhelming. And it gets to a point where I'm like, I have to get through the next 4 years. Like, I have to. And sitting and lamenting over the last year and the fact that we're in this position isn't really helping me at this point, because this is the reality that we're in right now. So I've been trying to focus on the things that I can control. So like I said a few weeks ago, that is how I deal with all of this. I focus on the things I can actually have impact on. So I may not be able to impact the way that ICE is directly profiling people and deporting them in some of the most horrendous ways, but I can at least talk to my community and see how we can counteract some of that, or how we can build networks around them to keep them safe. I really try my best to focus on those things, because it is depressing if you don't. So I know that I'm not the only one that's being greatly impacted by all of this, but I just want to say that this is real, what is happening right now. And I'm doing everything I can to take care of myself and those around me in the midst of all of it. But yeah. Oh, and a big one. Information has been particularly difficult for me to wrap my head around. I know for years people have been saying fake media, why is no one talking about this? There's been a huge question of media and its validity, but I've never really fully subscribed to that. I'm not saying there aren't media that have not been the best or credible. Obviously that's a thing. But holistically, as someone that works in PR, I felt pretty confident about media and what the information that they provide, the reporting and things like that. Because of this administration, this is the first time I've actually questioned it. And it's not because of the reporters themselves, it's just the ability for them to report on things at all. It's access to information that's really concerning me right now. And I've seen directly how difficult it is to get information on certain topics now. And that's extremely concerning to me. And you're talking to someone that literally like works in communications, directly works with media. Like, this is not something that is completely foreign to me, and I'm just strictly looking at as someone that consumes media. So there are journalists that are doing really great work right now, and I think it's so important to support them because they're under a lot of pressure right now. I just really encourage people to keep in mind that the issues here are the companies that they're operating under, not the journalists themselves. So we got to get through the next 4 years, y'all. So I don't really have many truthfully positive things to say after all of this. I mainly came on here to say this because I wanted to make sure it was communicated that this has direct impact and it's not just this theoretical thing. And it is impacting me and many other people in a very deep and resonant way. And it is difficult right now. But also, I don't believe he has a vein condition, personally. So I might be able to whip out the cowbell soon. Who knows?
Now, from the clip, you're able to see how unequal American society is. You might think that you have equal rights. You might think that everything works for you, but it doesn't work for you because you fall in the minority. All the process of creating American Constitution was done by white male people. And they are the ones called the founding fathers of America, as it were. So if you look at what they wanted or what they desired, all they had in their mind was that America will be this great country that unites all white people together to dominate over other people. And that is why you realize that within itself, the Constitution did not work towards helping minority groups exist. Yet, during this time, while these people were making this Constitution, they knew that America has other minority groups. For instance, slaves were already in the United States. And that really tells you the mindset that they had. They knew that there will be no point when slaves, who are black for that matter, will have an opportunity to make contributions towards the building of American state, as it were. So if you look at this, I am sure if these founding fathers rose from the dead and came back to life, they'd be scared of the America they are looking at and the America they're seeing today. And that tells you what the real story behind their existence is all about. The American Constitution, crafted in 1787, was a product of its time, shaped by the interest of predominantly white male property-owning elite. While it established a framework for governance that emphasized checks and balances, its creation process and early implementation were deeply skewed against minority groups, particularly black people, through mechanisms that entrenched systemic inequality. The Constitutional Convention excluded marginalized groups, including enslaved and free black individuals, Native Americans, and women from participation. Delegates, primarily wealthy white men, prioritized economic and political stability for their class, often at the expense of equitable representation. The lack of diverse voices ensured that the document reflected the biases and priorities of its framers, embedding protections for slavery and limiting mechanisms for minority inclusions. For instance, the Electoral College and Senate structure disproportionately amplified the influence of smaller, often slave-holding states, giving them outsized power over national policy and entrenching racial hierarchies. The Constitution's explicit accommodations for slavery starkly illustrates its bias against black people. The 3/5 Compromise, outlined in Article 1, Section 2, counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person for purposes of representation and taxation, boosting the political power of slaveholding states without granting enslaved people any rights. This compromise not only dehumanized black individuals, but also ensured that southern states could dominate federal politics, perpetuating slavery's legal and economic foundations. Additionally, the Fugitive Slave Clause, Article 5, Section 2, mandated the return of escaped slaves, effectively nationalizing the enforcement of slavery and denying black people agency or protection under the law. These provisions prioritized the economic interests of white slaveholders over justice, embedding racial oppression into the nation's foundational document. The Constitution's implementation further marginalized black people and other minorities through restrictive interpretations and federal policies. The document's vagueness on individual rights allowed states to enact laws that disenfranchised black citizens and Native Americans. For example, most states limited voting rights to white male property owners, excluding free black men and others from political participation. The judiciary, tasked with interpreting the Constitution, often reinforced these inequalities. Early Supreme Court decisions like the 1857 Dred Scott versus Stanford case explicitly denied citizenship to black people, free or enslaved, asserting they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. This ruling underscored how the Constitution's framework, as interpreted, provided no recourse for black individuals seeking justice or equality, solidifying the exclusion from the nation's legal protections. Beyond black Americans, other minority groups such as Native Americans face systemic exclusion rooted in the Constitution's structure and implementation. The document's treatment of Native tribes as domestic dependent nations, later clarified in cases like Cherokee Nation versus Georgia in 1831, stripped them of sovereignty and facilitated policies like forced removal under the Indian Removal Act of 1830. The Constitution's silence on native rights allowed the federal government to prioritize white expansionism, culminating in events like the Trails of Tears. Similarly, the lack of explicit protection for minority groups enabled states to enact discriminatory laws, such as those targeting free black communities with restrictive black codes that limited their mobility, labor, and rights. These early practices highlight how the Constitution's implementation enabled a legal and social order that marginalized non-white groups. The legacy of these biases persisted well beyond the Constitution's ratification, and its framework required amendments and prolonged struggles to address these inequalities. The Reconstruction Amendments 13th, 14th, and 15th attempted to rectify some of these injustices by abolishing slavery, guaranteeing equal protection, and extending voting rights. However, the implementation was undermined by Supreme Court rulings like Plessy versus Ferguson of 1896, which upheld segregation under the separate but equal doctrine, and by state-level disenfranchisement tactics like poll taxes and literary tests. These barriers, rooted in the Constitution's deference to state authority, perpetuated systemic discrimination against black people and other minorities. While the Constitution's amendment process offered a path to reform, its original design and early application undeniably favored white interest, requiring centuries of activism to challenge the entrenched inequalities that enabled it. I think this really gives you the true story of how American Constitution was created. It has been very, very difficult for black people to get the true rights that they deserve. It has been very, very difficult for minority groups. It has been very difficult for Native Americans to survive the onslaught that white expansionists have exerted upon their lands. Much of the lands that now whites have taken over was belonging to the Native Americans, who used it for their farm and basic activities that they used to do by that time. But then when these white Europeans came to America, they decided to industrialize the country without any consideration of how tampering with the environment would inflict pain or change the lifestyle of the Native Americans, as it were. It has been a long struggle that blacks have gone through, remembering the civil rights movements and how these kind of issues led to a lot of deaths and a lot of challenges within black communities. It has been a long journey, and I believe one day, just one day, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, the black person will stand and shall get freedom that they deserve. Share your thoughts down in the comment section. And if you're watching us for the first time, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet on the next one.